Pat's Personal Portraits. You have tuned in to KTAR.com on the very best possible day, because you're going to meet a whole lot of people that are very familiar to you, in spite of the fact that this lady may not necessarily be recognizable. Chris O'Dell, now living in Tucson, but at one time in your life, you lived in London. Chris, what the heck were you doing singing on Hey Jude?
Well, it wasn't my voice. It wasn't because of my wonderful vocal
You were not
talent.
a professional singer?
I was not. I was working for the Beatles at Apple in 68 and 69, and I just happened to be around a lot. So I was an easy grab. Here, we need a voice, let's get her.
Let's see. I know you well enough, having talked to you in the past about this and your book and your adventures in the world of the British invasion. Girl from Muncie, Indiana, from Oklahoma, Tucson. How did you wind up in the recording industry in London during that period of time?
It was kismet. You know, I was lucky that I went to LA. I ran away from home because Tucson was boring, and went to LA and met a man who had worked for the Beatles named Derek Taylor.
Oh,
and he
was their publicist.
He was their publicist, and he was working in LA for a few years. He liked me. He said, you should come to London and work for the Beatles. They're
How
just
much
opening.
did he like you? Did you go together?
No. He was a man with 15 kids or something. I drove him around, and he just liked my energy.
Yeah, but in the 60s, nobody cared how many kids somebody had. I mean, it was a period of time when those questions were not normally asked. Did you fall in love with anybody in the recording industry, any of those stars that you worked with?
Well, you know, you always fall in love a little bit with them. But
name one.
The only one that I really had a relationship with that was of any substance was Leon Russell.
Oh, wow. And what a great musician. Mm-hmm. If you saw Leon now, would he have pleasant memories of the relationship?
He would. He would.
Talk to me about that day when you were singing in Hey Jude. I have to go back to that because there were a lot of voices and I wasn't one of them. I want to know, how is it that a non-singer wound up in one of the most famous background choruses in recording history?
Well, Paul came up and they needed to put the chorus on. They had the orchestra. We were at Trident Studios, and I was sitting in the control booth with George Martin and the engineer. And he said, let's go do the chorus. Come on, Chris, come downstairs. We need voices. And there weren't that many other people there, so I hesitated, you know, going, ugh. But I went down, and we all stood around a few mics. It was all set up in the basement, and me, the orchestra, and the Beatles. And at first, they all it was the chorus, so, you know, it was the da-da-da. And they all started singing, and I mouthed it, because I thought, I don't want to be the one off tune here. And then I realized it didn't matter. And Paul was leading it, and it felt so good. It was really an up. You know how the chorus is, even as you hear it today?
Yeah.
It was like that night. So pretty soon I just said, screw it, and I started singing.
Yeah, and to this day, you're kind of happy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, your life wasn't just with Leon Russell and the Beatles, though. If I say, torn from the flaming pages of Chris O'Dell's book, oh, yeah, that chapter about doing a favor for Keith.
Ah, the drug run. The drug run that I never thought of as a drug run until the publisher said, oh, that was a drug run. And I went, no, it wasn't. That was part of my job description. Chris, can you go to L.A. and pick up some stuff for me? You know, Keith says this, Mick says, Chris, can you fly to New York and take my camera to get fixed?
This is Keith Richards.
Yeah, Keith Richards. So when Keith says go to LA and get stuff, I did. I didn't see an issue with it.
And we are all thrilled that you were not stopped by what was then the TSA.
It was one of many times that we went through, you know, we went through countries with drugs.
What'd you think of Mick?
I like Mick. He's very intelligent. He's the businessman. I spent a lot of time as their personal assistant, doing business things, going to meetings, so he's smart.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to be around Mick Jagger just a little bit, and I was really struck with his mind. Very, very bright, very well-read person. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing in your life is not the past, it's what you're doing now.
Yes.
Tell everybody.
Well, addiction, I had my own addiction by the time I got finished with working, especially in 1972 after the Stones tour. I was had a big addiction, but it stayed for a long time. So in about 1988, I got sober because of my son, basically. I figured someone had to be a parent. And so I got sober, and now I'm a therapist working with people with addictions and mental health issues.
Could you have helped Amy Winehouse or Whitney?
Would they have been able to help themselves? I think all therapists like to think they can be the one that can help someone. But, these people, they just never got it, sadly. And a lot of people don't. I mean, there's a point where you try and try and try. I don't think we use all the right techniques for helping people, especially celebrities. Celebrities, it's very difficult for them. It is very difficult.
What's the name of the place you're taking care of now?
It's called Casa de Palmas. It's part of the Haven in Tucson. The part I run is all female. It's a house. It's Linda Ronstadt's house, actually. And she leased it to us, and it's beautiful. And it's really helped a lot of women, and I'm grateful for that.
We could go through so many music personalities, but we're out of time. We do have just enough time for you to take us out musically, though, with the chorus of Hey Jude, if you'd like.
Oh, no.
Okay, at these prices, am I going to argue? Hey, come on. This is Pat's Personal Portrait on KTAR.com with Chris O'Dell.